Hello everyone, my name is Michael Maxwell and I'm with Mike's Custom Lures, owner and founder. And today I'm going to go over my lure called the Mini Grub and explain to some of you out there that may not be familiar with how to fish a jig or may be new to jig fishing. These are some of the techniques I use and hope you can use the same techniques to catch your next fish. So, what I have here is a 6'6" ultralight rod with a fast tip, and that is the determination on how you work the lure right there. So, ultralight rod, fast tip, 6'6" or bigger. You know, sometimes we fish them 8-foot, 9-foot rods up in that area. But just make sure that's an ultralight with a fast tip or moderate action fast tip. Today I topped it off with a President XT Fluger with my Triple S Series line 4-pound test and the Low Viz Green. So, what is a Mini Grub? Oh, glad you asked. Mini Grub is something that I designed and came up with because we grew up jig fishing, Mr. Twister jigs, things like that, you know, back in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, things like that. So this is a Mini Grub. And what this does is once you hook it up, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute, but that tail right there is all the action. So whenever you jig this and it's going through the water, that tail is nonstop. So that acts like a fish catching attractant straight up. So the fish see that and they react to it. So you're creating a reaction strike more than a presentation strike. However, presentation is a key point to catch fish, but if a fish can react to it, 9 times out of 10, they're going to strike to it. So, how do we rig the Mini Grub to the hook? So, I have here my 1/64 ounce lead head with a number 6 sickle hook. Now, the reason why I went to the sickle hook, as you can see, it creates, once I get the body on there, it creates a bigger gap hold between the lure and the actual hook set. So, when the fish hits that and you get that deep penetration hook set, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna land that fish. He's not gonna be able to throw the hook. And the reason why I went to the bigger hook, because a lot of you steelhead fishermen out there, sometimes you fish for salmon, things like that, and this bigger hook allows you to penetrate them jaws on them bigger fish better. So, how you rig the Mini Grub? You take your hook 90 degrees, take your jig body, and I don't know if you can see it, but I got my logo on the grub itself. So it says Mike's, so instead of Mike's Custom Mini Grubs, it's MCMG. So what you do is you hook it dead center. You try to hook it dead center. And then you feed the grub to the arch side of the hook, like so. So when you reached about the top side of the hook, and right on the back side of the MCMG, you're going to pop out. And if you can see that, right there in an indentation where the hook comes out of, and that gives you a straight hook set every time. And then once you jig this lure in the water, that tail does all the work. So, what we like to do is, some of you all like to use a float. Some of you all just like to jig. So when you use a float, so this is an 1.25 inch Mike's Custom float. So what you do is, there's a slot in it. See that slot? So it's a slotted float. So what we're going to do is, we're going to take the grub, and we're going to start about 12 inches up. We're going to find the slot, and we're going to peg it so it pinches the line like such. Now, to adjust this float, you remove the peg, slide the float up or down at your desired length, and then repeg. Keep in mind, do not slide the float against the line. It causes too much friction. So, this setup right here, if you're a float fisherman, that is all you need. So you got your jig, and you got your float. Now, you can add a split shot about 8 to 10 inches up from the lure to get that castability out there to reach them far away fish, because sometimes they like to lay on the opposite side of the river, as we all know, and to get that presentation and that drift right to the fish, we stand 45 degrees angle up from the feeding fish. So we cast 45 degrees upstream, let that line drip down, and if you use a float, make sure you pop that float every once in a while to get that jig to work that action. Now, if you don't use a float, then the technique is, if you look at my rod tip, the technique is this method right here, which we just move the rod very slightly, 3 to 6 inches or 1 to 3 inches, depends on your fishing capabilities. So we just barely tap the rod handle, and then we can consistently move that rod tip. That is the key. Consistent, move the tip. So when that bait comes in front of them feeding fish, like I said, they're going to see it, they're going to react, and they're going to strike. So them are the techniques we use. The mini grub, 64th ounce jig head with a number 6 hook is what we carry and what I like the best. and the Mike's Custom floats if you use the floats. Now, I talked about hook gap width between the body and the hook. So there is the gap width, and it's about 1/4 of an inch. So you get that deep penetration on them bigger fish when you create that good hook set. This allows for that jaw of them bigger fish, because they got bigger bones and more bone structure than they do them, 12-ounce, 12-inch trout that they stock, things like that. So when them big steelhead and salmon run up north, you got a good hook penetration for them bigger fish. And it doesn't affect stock trout at all. Stock trout, they still bite it. It doesn't affect the way the hook is. A buddy of mine caught a 6-pound bass on it. So them hooks, I swear by them. They, to me, for that setup, they're the best out there on the market. So, like I said, so recap what we did. We got a 6'6" ultralight. We got 4-pound test, or line of your choosing, but we used the Triple S and low vis green. We capped it off with a 3500 President XT, which may be too big for some of you guys, but when you go up north and you're fishing bigger water, you like to have a bigger reel to hold in bigger fish and a more line capacity. Some of you guys like the 1000s. We have the President SP35s, which is equivalent to a 1000 series, and that will do the job. So we got the 6'6" ultralight, fast tip, light action, 3500 Akuma, Triple S line, MC custom float with a Mike's Custom Mini Grub. Hope you enjoyed today's broadcast, and always thank you for your business, and fish on.